everybody agrees. It's heartening to see the opportunities that we are hearing of in the pharma sector. And in that light, I think it's only apt that we throw the focus light on a segment which kind of got catapulted into the spotlight, so to say, during the COVID times. And they were right there with the COVID alongside the frontline workers, really ensuring that we got our medicines on time. And everybody here in this room, I'm sure, has ordered medicines from an e-pharmacy at some point in time. So on that note, what we're going to look at in this discussion is how the e-pharmacy segment has traversed so far and what opportunities lay in future. On that note, Anant, I would like to pose the question for you. Like I mentioned, COVID was a time when e-pharmacies really came into light as such. Starting from this vantage point, how do you perceive the growth of e-pharmacies so far?
We always believe, that technology adoption in India becomes fairly quick, right? So we are a country that probably lags slightly in innovation at some point of time, but we are extremely fast in adapting to new things, right? And when COVID came, and obviously it was a challenge for all of us, right? E-pharmacies picked up and the business model, thrived at that point of time, right? And all of these, businesses are still very, very large. They are now substantial businesses, right? They have solved a problem that probably we had but never realized, right? One is accessibility, second is affordability, and third is authenticity of the medicines, right? Now, if you look at accessibility at large, right? E-pharmacies have solved that problem where now you get your medicines at home, right? And whether you are a person 65, my dad orders online medicines a lot, right? Or probably you are a young professional, needing that for your family, right? But you don't have the time to do it on a day-to-day basis. You can just order it online, and it's so accessible, right? Affordability has obviously helped consumers like us, right? Where we've all probably at hindsight known, that there were margins out there, and we've now benefited from e-pharmacy, also helping us, pass on that standard of benefit to the consumers as well. So it's become more accessible to the consumers. Plus, if you look at, authenticity of the medicines, right? We all know there is a impending issue of, let's say, spurious medicines, right? And brand switching that's generally there, right? With e-pharmacy, that problem again has been solved, right? Where availability is not an issue, the medicines are backtracked with QR codes and everything, right? And there's no brand switching that typically happens, right, in e-pharmacy. So I think these are the three pillars that probably are the issue that e-pharmacies have solved. And I think that obviously the business model has evolved, people have learned from whatever they have done over the past few years. And we at TH Healthcare and as a bank, we are extremely bullish on the sector. We feel that we've just broken ice in the sector, and probably there is a lot to do in the sector, and not only from a B2C perspective, but also from a B2B perspective, right? Extremely bullish and
Let me get the company perspective, right? Now, as a comparison, we had the traditional pharmacists that we went to, the corner shop that we went to. If I had to, ask both you, Babul and Prateek, about, how do you react to some of the points that come up against e-pharmacies? For example, deep discounts or compliance, or maybe even spurious medicines, although Anant said that it's not so. If you could just tell us a bit about how do you react to these comparisons that usually come up?
First of all, thank you for having me here. Just to put things in perspective, the pharmacy industry, talking about perhaps 25-30 billion. The organized retail is 10% of it. And the e-pharmacies that we are talking about, perhaps 3 to 4%. So while e-pharmacies have grown with a CAGR of approximately 60% since 2018, and COVID did help break the ice. But even with the adoption of technology, with the adoption of e-commerce in general coming into the healthcare space, the expansion of urbanization of middle class, we are expecting CAGR growth rate of 25 to 30%. So while this is growing, overall e-pharmacy is still a smaller number, so there's a lot of headroom, and that shows a lot of potential. The sector in general, like we have talked about, is a bit disorganized. We have 800,000 to 1 million retailers at the end of it. And the organized sector is trying to help streamline, trying to organize the supply chain inefficiencies and all of that. Then you talked about, so with access, on the point of spurious, especially if I have to talk about the e-pharmacies in general, at least what we do at Tata and MG, we procure all our entire procurement happens directly from pharmaceutical companies or their authorized distributors. So that's a promise that we make to our consumers. Secondly, the entire supply chain is end-to-end tracked and traced. For example, if there are temperature regulations requirements, we would follow that. We would even give it as a, let's say, give that visibility to our users. So that's something that we are trying to solve, and I think lately we have all read about it, about the not NSQ findings or the spurious findings, and I think it's a very welcome change that the regulatory authorities are cracking down on it. The CDSCO, so I think a good work has been done, and I think the solution would be towards embracing technology. I think the government of India already talked about or had mandated the 300 drugs to be QR coded. So while all the platforms are trying to implement their own robust mechanism to trace and track, but I think what helps is a general collective effort across all the bodies to ensure that this problem is taken care of.
Prateek?
So good afternoon, everyone. If you look at e-pharmacy, it has evolved over the period of time. Now, the essence of access have now become affordability and now regulation. If you look today, one of the critical aspects is e-pharmacy regulated? On the paper, the answer is no, because there is no regulation at the moment which supports either selling e-pharmacy or completely stop. There are multiple drafts which have come out, but if you look from the ecosystem today, there are more checks done in e-pharmacy than in an offline trade. A prescription is uploaded, there is a back-end pharmacist who actually checks the prescription. Yes, is it 100% validated? Maybe yes, maybe no, but there is a check that takes place in the e-pharmacy. Are we securing the problem of affordability? We are passing on the benefits to the customers. That's how today you see deep discounting. It's nothing to do about us not having a pure trade play. If we are able to source it from an OEM at a lucrative price, we are passing on that discount to the patients. So who is benefiting today is the patient community. The third is the tech. The way, whether it is a QR code, whether it is the cold chain supply for vaccine, for oncology drugs, where the temperatures needs to be maintained, that is happening at the regional level. The access has gone beyond. So I see this continuing tremendously over the period of time. We are still not reaching even 10% of tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cases. Our healthcare ecosystem is still within that 80% of the Indian cities, predominantly in metros. So the real solution that e-pharmacy has to bring in is still not tapped. And that is where the government of India, the manufacturers and the industry body needs to work very closely, keeping patients at the front and trying to create an ecosystem.
Okay, so do you think there will be, cohesive, will e-pharmacies and traditional pharmacies really get together and form a cohesive unit? Do you think that will happen? How can both these stakeholders really hold hands together and walk ahead?
The Indian healthcare is so huge that neither an offline pharmacy or an online pharmacy will be able to suffice the demand or the supply. We are talking about an instance where today we are just competing in the same market. We have not expanded or created new markets, whether it is online or offline. There is huge markets to be played. There will be a consolidation where the offline will leverage the online pharmacies to expand their network. And we have seen that with Medikabazaar, where Pharmacy, where the local chemists have tied up with us, and we are supplying their drugs to the nearby 10 kilometer, 20 kilometer radius. And that's supposed to happen. What needs to happen today is the GOI needs to come, that's the government of India, with a well-structured framework. There are a lot of efforts done by the industry to check whether it is counterfeit, to check the Schedule H or X drugs are not being sold, to check that the pricings are not completely deviating from the MRPs or deep discounting is done. There are balances in place, but there is no structure given to the entire ecosystem. Today we have multiple sources of procurement, not just manufacturers. We have super stockists, retailers. How do we ensure that all the authorized channel partners today are not giving us the kind of counterfeit products? There is a switching that takes place in the industry today, whether it is local chemists, where today you go for a simple painkiller, you ask for a Dolo, they will not have, they'll give you a substitute of that. That is happening today. Online is still a checks and balance, because if there is not, they either tell you it is out of stock or they will ask for you to check and get a new prescription. There are balances, but this skeleton needs to be imprinted in an ecosystem. Both of them will survive. We are talking just about 10% penetration, and India today is huge. We have not even reached the tier 3, tier 4. Not even offline, not even online. So there's a huge market for both of them.
So Anant, in the light of this potential that stares at us, what measures do you think the government should really get in place to make the framework, get more clarity in the whole framework as such?
See, I think issue with any sunrise sector, right? And because again, probably none of us has thought that e-pharmacies will become so big in the last 5 years, right? It's probably, let's say, an event which caught us also off guard as a country, right? But I think we are on the right track. Probably government is working on frameworks. We are now seeing, let's say, quick commerce also happening in e-pharmacies, right? Which is the right step, right? At least for OTC products and non-prescription drugs, that can happen, right? And it happens in all industries, right? Once you get at a point where it becomes more generally accepted, whether it was, let's say, ride-hailing apps or QSR deliveries, right? They become regulated. Government steps in to make sure that customers are not probably shortchanged and all of that, right? I think a more closer look at some of these things is something that probably the regulatory bodies need to do, right? And make sure that as told by the panelists, right, that we have to make sure that frameworks are in place, right? And regulations are generally not bad, right? It helps you also fall in place and do certain things that are required, right? And probably we are one of the largest markets for e-pharmacies, right? I mean, there are some companies that we are speaking to in Southeast Asia that still have it, but globally it's a concept which is very, very unique to India, right? And we are probably one of the few countries that do e-pharmacy as a business, right? So I think probably everyone is also looking at us to see how we evolve. We need to do something to make sure that, as the panelist said, that medicines are procured in the right fashion, medicines are delivered in the right fashion. If there is temperature control needed, I mean, today also there are these smaller issues that are already there, right? And we all know it, that not all medicines are temperature controlled and transported the way they are, right? But with, let's say, formalized value chains coming in, formalized pharmacies coming in, whether B2B, B2C, right? Both of them are equally important. I mean, all of this has to be streamlined and there has to be regulation. If a vaccine has to be transported at a certain temperature, it has to be, right? There are no ifs and buts about it, right? And same with other medicines, right? If there is a Schedule H drug or others, right? It cannot be sold just like that, right? I think some of these clarification has to come in. It will come in. I'm sure it will come in the next few years. And once it does, right, this industry will then again see the next wave of growth, because now you know, as happened with other industries where microfinance as well, right? Just to give a crude example, where now it's regulated, now people are more sure that okay, now it's regulated, now the government has stepped in, now we know it's legit, right? We are not being shortchanged, right? And that is when the next set of growth will come. All of these companies will become even bigger, and we need organized pharmacies in India, right? Globally it is like that. In India it's slightly more different because of the nature of the business, but it will get organized, and we are at least heading in the right direction.
Just to add on that, so like I think we have said, there is a need for a comprehensive regulatory framework, and the draft rules under the Drug and Cosmetics Act have been in the public domain for quite some time, and they have been drafted in consultation with all the bodies. We also, as industry body, were part of that as stakeholders. I think it is waiting to be notified, and if that gets done, I think there's enough in it to ensure that all online, offline, everything can work in harmony with each other. So that's what we are waiting for.
Okay. So Babul, you mentioned technology, right? How do you think technology and quick commerce, which Anant mentioned, can be leveraged to really scale up this particular sector?
So e-pharmacy scale up is all tech. Today, whether it is supply chain integration both at the customer end. So at Medikabazaar, we are selling at B2B. We don't do B2C sales. So when we tie up with hospitals, whether it is single specialty or multiple specialty, our tech platform gets integrated with them. So their monthly consumption varies from 20 lakh rupees to 5 crores, 6 crores per month on Pharma. So they understand what kind of products they are getting, at what price they are getting, for the discounts they are getting, whether it's counterfeit or not. Cold storage supply chain temperatures has been recorded. They get a consolidated data. They get the margin variations. They also get to know that one of them is out of expiry or near expiry, so that they can return back the stocks and we can return back the stocks to them. These tech models will enable handling of such large value ecosystem much easier. It will be scalable. It will be something which is data driven, where everyone has access to, right from the purchase head to the CEOs of the hospital, to the industry, even to the OEMs, that they get to know which of the brands are doing extremely well in which of the hospitals, which of the regions. Moreover, everything is in the ecosystem, so there is no chance for cross-validation. There is no chance for any spuriousness. The authorized dealers are there, which are onboarded, so the purchase happens from them. So tech is going to play an important role, and we see that for scaling up, we will need tech to come forward.
Okay, so another question is about data privacy, right? I mean, data is like gold in today's times. So how can manufacturers and companies? This is a question to both of you all. Quickly, if you can just give your view on this. On how do you manage data privacy in today's time?
So as of now, the rules, regulations, acts, whatever exist, so we are compliant with all of that. In fact, very lately under DPIIT, the new DPDP Act, Data Personal Data Protection Rules, have been floated in public. I think 18th Feb is the deadline to share comments, and I think in the next few months that will get implemented. So that's again a step in the right direction. But like previously mentioned, this combined with your Drug and Cosmetics Act, your FDIs, your all your regulatory at the ground level, if we can just have a cohesive, comprehensive framework put together, that will be a good step forward. Till then, whatever rules, laws are there, we are compliant, and I think in e-pharmacies in general, because they are tech-first companies, they at least the foundational infrastructure is in place to ensure that data, privacy, security, etc. are all in place.
So I divide the data into two parts. One is the data that the manufacturers want, because that is their data that they would like to invest in the platform like us. How are their products going, which are the geographies they are doing, what is the price change. That data is something which I am pro, keeping the patient confidentiality away. So the patient confidentiality is maintained again under the regulated act. But when we give the data at a very commercialization level to make them understand that how this model is impacting their sales, how it is impacting their coverage, it helps in further investment from OEMs. They look at us as someone who are the partner of sales, not just as an alternative method of pump and dump. So these are a very creative ways of doing it. Patient data are strictly confidential, that are not shared to anyone. Similarly, the doctors which are onboarded with us, so there are certain amount of hospitals, there are certain amount of practitioners who are onboarded with us, that data stays completely and is shared with the state body as and when asked for. But every other data, we are pro of sharing it with our partners, just for them to understand it's a co-shared model to work with.
Anant, if you could take a top-down view on what is the opportunity that we're looking at as far as e-pharmacies are concerned, and how can stakeholders really ensure that it turns out into a whole ecosystem of sorts, like a pharma ecosystem of sorts.
Yeah, so if you look at the landscape, right, I think the landscape is divided into two parts, right? One is a B2B landscape and a B2C. B2C landscape is fairly discovered. There are very large players out there doing some amazing things, right? B2B is where I think the next set of growth, next leg of magic will happen, right? We've seen a lot of companies doing some amazing work there, whether it's respect to minimizing downtime, with respect to the delivery of the medicines, whether the fill rate being 100%. In a traditional distribution channel, the fill rates can be slightly lower. In a traditional distribution channel, the fill rates can be slightly lower at times because you may not have the exact stock knowledge of the distributor at large. But there are some companies who are creating a tech-enabled platform where a back-ending to the distributor, making sure that all the medicines are available and in the public domain, even with stocks. So I think next set of growth will happen there. A lot of innovation needs to happen on the B2B channel to reduce, let's say, fill rate issues, to reduce, let's say, delivery time. If, let's say, a B2C order can be fulfilled in, let's say, 3 or 6 hours, a B2B order probably can also be fulfilled with, let's say, a larger dark store format probably in the next 6 to 9 hours, right? If you probably go to a local pharmacy, you will probably have a 90-95% fill rate. There should be even a higher fill rate in B2B pharmacy, in B2B model, right? Why can't we have a 100% fill rate as a pharmacy when I'm ordering it with a distributor, right, or a super stockist? So I think that's the next set of growth and next set of capital raising that will happen. B2C has evolved over time. The players are massive now. They are obviously they will need capital as and when go along, but we see a lot of small players getting where you will also see a lot of e-pharmacies, especially the B2C ones, as pointed out, right, that there is a lot of data, right, and you know what the patients are ordering, you know what they are doing, right. Probably you can order, help them with cross-selling some services, right. So I think that's probably the next level of growth, next set of levers that all of these companies have, and yeah, exciting times ahead probably for the industry.
If I could ask both of you, Prateek and Babul, what are the critical investment areas? This is my last question here, and I have to take questions now. What are the critical investment areas according to you from a company perspective?
So if you look at the pain points, if you try to go into solving them, you get the value. And there are few emerging trends. So we have talked about, let's say, trust and authenticity. Perhaps not a lot of people are aware or educated enough about it, but very soon the time will come when it will become need of the hour. And then you would need robust supply chains, entire infrastructure, like I mentioned, traceability, tracking, and all of that. So that's an investment area where the world is moving. Another trend is that now the focus is not just on, let's say, e-pharmacy or fulfilling the medicine need, but a comprehensive condition management solutions. So because most of the big players that we're talking about, take any one of them, they all have suite of services, e-pharmacy, e-diagnostics, consultations, health content. So you package them, you create a solution, because there are a lot of people who are looking at wellness management. It's not just about being sick management, but also well management. So that's another direction in which we are also working, and a bunch of other people are working. The third one, just in the e-pharmacy, I think that's the new craze, and that what we briefly touched, is the quick commerce side. The foundational pillars for quick commerce are: there has to be enough order density, there has to be enough margin, and the last mile cost should be sustainable. The first and third in India, by virtue of population, fits the bill. That's how you got grocery kicking. Margin expansion is happening either through customers paying for the service, or monetization, or category expansion. When it comes to e-pharmacies, while the order density may not be as high, but because it has become an inherent need, so it is something that everyone is moving towards. So that's another trend, and this trend will pick up in this year. Very soon you will see a bunch of players going to offer e-pharmacy as part of quick commerce offering. So it has already started. So we have also been piloting it in Gurgaon for a year. Now we are expanding to Delhi, NCR, and a bunch of other cities. In Bangalore, a couple of more players have started it. So that's something which is going to start.
So we are investing heavily in technology, both from the buyer side, the seller side, and the demand. Supply chain, so we deal a lot of cold chain. So we are the largest supplier of vaccines and oncology in India today from a supply chain perspective. So ensuring that the cold chain remains at temperature regulated and to reach the last mile. So we today cater to around 3,000 pin codes in India. We wish to cater to around 7,500 by end of the year. So that's how we are trying to scale up. If you look today, the growth will come from two aspects. There are a lot of Indian companies today which are not even focusing on India just because of the sheer bandwidth issue and the kind of markets. So they look at us as a partner for sales in India. They are heavily dependent in exports, so for them it's a higher price value realization. So we take care of them. There are a lot of foreign companies who do not wish to open and complete operation in India, just because of the way competitive landscape is there. So they look at us as, again, a sole distributor. So we have exclusive distributorship of multiple companies who do not wish to enter India, but still would like to have India as a lucrative market, whether it is in institutions, whether it is in B2B or in B2C. So that's where we see ourselves going forward.
Thank you for those insights. I think we can now open up the floor for any questions. You can raise your hands, and mics are floating around. So.
Yeah, hi, my name is Akash. I'm with the investment team at A91 Partners. My question is for Prateek. The question is more around traded generics and what some people call generics. We've seen it growing really fast, and we've seen a lot of e-pharmacy players also dabble in this space, right? But we've not really seen them get much success in increasing the volumes of traded generics on their platforms, apart from maybe one or two. Do you think this market will largely evolve only in the offline space? And what is it sort of going to take for e-pharmacies to convert the customer to sort of switch over to that traded generic?
Yeah, good question. I think partly the answer was somewhere in between. As a platform, the processes that we follow, so you cannot just switch, right? So there has to be an entire process where you educate the customer, then you enable that customer to, let's say, talk to either on platform doctor or their own doctor, come back with a revised prescription, and only then they can do the switch. So that is a barrier, but I would say the barrier is technology as well as awareness, and that is something I think the platforms are trying to work towards in the right ethical manner. There are platforms who have gone heavy on this messaging. They've built the business on it. It helps end consumers because it saves money. But then the onus is also on the platform to ensure that A, the quality is not compromised at all, and B, it is done in a manner which is compliant by law of the land. So I think that's where the friction is, but we are also picking it up, and hopefully hopefully soon we'll, because at the end of the day the consumers will benefit.
Yeah. Hi Prateek, Dr. Nityaraj here, Managing Partner at Medium Healthcare. Just wanted to ask you, with quick commerce coming in and everyone having limited real estate on the mobile phones, they have deeper penetration in 70-80% of your PIN codes that you would have. Now if I'm getting everything from groceries to whatever on that app, and that app is installed with probably 80%, 90% more customers than a 1mg pharmacy, any of these e-pharmacy players. What's your moat against it? How do you protect your share of the market?
So a part of it is protected by the Tatas who are associated with us. So I don't know, so I'll try to answer. So there's a Tata New app, I don't know how many of you know. So the Tata New has the same plane. So they have a bunch of brands. So there's Big Basket, there's 1mg, there's Click, there's Chroma, and then Tatas have all the brands, right? So there's something called a New Flash which is coming up, which is an offering very similar to, let's say, what a Flipkart Minutes would be like, or the Zeptos or the Blinkits or the Swiggies would be like. So that's at a macro level, that's kind of like the same play that is being done. Coming at, let's say, if I just talk about Tata 1mg, like we have been talking about, this is a sector which you cannot just open without knowing the nuances of it, being very strong, or let's say sticking to the rules, the compliances, the regulatory requirements. So there is a barrier to entry in this market. It's not as easy as just selling chips and chocolates. But yes, there are players who are making an attempt, and like I mentioned, it is going to be the flavor in the next year, so that is coming. But we have been here for years, we have our supply chains in place, we have our, like I mentioned, we have been procuring directly from Pharma, so all the foundational work is being done, so our play is to build further on that and play on the aspects of authenticity, affordability and access.
And just to follow up on that, when we are talking about Big Basket or Tata 1mg, now both have different kinds of data. You said that the Tata New Flash or such super apps will protect things, but that's where DPDPA comes in. These are not the same entity. You're ordering from different entities. How do you share that data? How do you overcome that barrier?
No, so we're not sharing data. The way it is working is we are partnering with, let's say, a Big Basket. So you would have a shop-in-shop kind of model emerging, and this is being done, by the way, following the regulations of the state. So that is being done in a manner which is compliant, and then whether a user is ordering on 1mg or ordering on Big Basket or ordering on Tata New, the user is of the parent platform, and then it is getting fulfilled through a synergized supply chain which is enabling the, let's say, the fast delivery. So the enablement of supply chain is happening in conjunction with each other, but the users remain for the platforms that they are part of.
We have time for one last question. Yes.
Hello. Yeah, I just have one question. Ashish from Kotak. How does quick commerce dealing with prescription medicines? Obviously, it's fairly straightforward, but how does it work with the prescription medicine?
Are you talking about the time aspect
No,
of
not
it?
the time aspect. The delivery of prescription medicine, because then you need to have either a doctor or a pharmacist or somebody, and
So
then how do
that's
you ensure that you deliver in that, whatever, 6, 7, 10 minutes?
Yeah, which is the time aspect, because it will add time. It also doesn't mean that you will always get what you have asked for, because there's a check and balance in place. So it won't be, like I mentioned, it's not as easy as selling chips and chocolates. So whoever wants to start it, they will have to follow the due diligence of setting up everything in place. So it won't be as fast as other items. The simple answer.
Like what does regulation says about it, that you need to have?
You need to have a valid prescription, and it has to be dispensed by a licensed pharmacist. So those are the requirements. If prescription is being, let's say, if you don't have, then The platform has to enable a conversation between the doctor and the patient, which is between the two of them. The platform is just an enabler, facilitator, and based on whatever the doctor concerns, then the prescription comes into play. So that is the setup that at least the traditional e-pharmacies have built over the last decade or so. So you'll just have to follow the same principles whether you want to deliver in 10 minutes or 24 hours.